Meghan Markle's latest monetization bid looks set to be her most sick stunt yet, as she puts her latest was never wardrobe onto her new website.
Meghan Markle just caught in one of her biggest as ever lies yet. And also, in news that will surprise absolutely no one, Meghan Markle and Prince Harry are apparently wildly unhappy.
Well, Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Scamalot, that little huckster, she still doesn't seem to have real good quality control at her brand as ever, as you know.
Meghan and Harry put up with this all the time over there in California. I think maybe we should start a crowdfunder for them.
Maybe just a part of her would say, let me try something different. Let me do it differently. Everything that I've done in the past has failed.
A luxury chocolate box, a viral unboxing, and one very uncomfortable question. How does a brand charging nearly $60 for premium chocolates end up becoming the internet's punchline overnight? Because that's exactly what happened to Meghan Markle this week. And according to discussions presented in the uploaded material, the fallout has been far worse than most people realize. At first glance, this looks like a simple product complaint. A customer opens a package. The chocolates appear melted. The presentation is ruined. End of story. Except it wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning. Because according to the uploaded material, the unboxing immediately went viral. People weren't just criticizing the product. They were questioning the entire as ever brand. And honestly, you can understand why. Because when customers pay premium prices, they're not buying chocolate. They're buying confidence. They're buying trust. They're buying the promise that what arrives at their door will look at least somewhat similar to what was advertised. That's the deal. That's always been the deal. Then another uncomfortable detail emerged. This wasn't supposedly an isolated incident. According to discussions in the uploaded material, even promotional unboxings appeared to show similar issues with the chocolates arriving melted together. That became the controversy. Because a single mistake can be explained. A shipping problem. A packaging problem. A temperature problem. Customers understand that. But when multiple examples start appearing publicly, people stop blaming bad luck. They start blaming the system. And that's exactly where things started going wrong. Then another realization appeared. The chocolates aren't really the story. Not anymore. The chocolates are a symbol. A symbol of a much bigger question. Can Meghan actually build a successful consumer brand? Because according to the uploaded material, every product launch, every website update, every promotional campaign is now being judged through that lens. That's what makes this different. If a random company ships melted chocolates, nobody cares. If Meghan Markle ships melted chocolates, it becomes international news. Fair or unfair, that's the reality. Then another uncomfortable observation appeared. Critics argue that as ever keeps selling an image. Luxury, elegance, perfection, careful craftsmanship. But according to discussions presented in the uploaded material, some customers increasingly feel the products aren't matching the marketing. That gap became the problem. Because brands survive mistakes. What they struggle to survive is disappointment. Then came another question. Why does this keep happening? Because according to the uploaded material, this isn't the first product controversy connected to as ever. Critics continue pointing to previous complaints involving product quality and fulfillment issues. And that's where things become dangerous. Because one bad review is noise. A pattern becomes a narrative. And narratives are hard to escape. Especially when the internet decides you've become the main character of the week. Then another realization emerged. Maybe that's why this story exploded. Not because people care about chocolate. People don't. They care about credibility. And according to many observers following the controversy, that's what's really being tested right now. Because when customers open a luxury chocolate box and find a melted mess, they aren't just judging the chocolate. They're judging the person whose name is attached to it. And for Meghan Markle, that may be the biggest problem of all. Then things somehow got worse. Because according to the uploaded material, the melted chocolates weren't even the most talked about as ever product controversy of the week. That honor may belong to a candle. A $64 candle. And not just any candle. A candle supposedly inspired by one of the most important days of Meghan's life. At least that's how it was presented. According to the uploaded material, the product was marketed as being inspired by the feelings and memories surrounding Meghan and Harry's wedding day. On paper, that's a smart idea. Wedding memories sell. Romance sells. Nostalgia sells. People understand those emotions. The problem is what happened next. Because critics immediately started comparing the marketing to older reports about the wedding itself. And suddenly the internet was asking a question Meghan probably didn't want people asking. Which version is the real story? That became the controversy. Because according to discussions presented in the uploaded material, critics pointed to past reports claiming Meghan had concerns about the atmosphere and scent inside St. George's Chapel before the wedding. Again, those reports are disputed and have been debated for years. But critics immediately connected them to the candle marketing. And once they made that connection, social media did the rest. Then another uncomfortable realization appeared. People weren't evaluating the candle itself. They were evaluating Meghan's credibility. That's the pattern that keeps repeating. Chocolate becomes a credibility debate. A candle becomes a credibility debate. A website update becomes a credibility debate. Everything eventually circles back to the same question. Do people trust the person selling the product? And according to many observers following the situation, that's where the real battle is taking place. Not in warehouses. Not in shipping centers. Not in packaging departments. In public perception. Then another observation started spreading online. Critics argued that as ever seems to be selling a lifestyle more than products. Think about it. The jam isn't really jam. The candle isn't really a candle. The chocolate isn't really chocolate. They're all pieces of a larger image. A carefully curated vision of California luxury, elegance, and effortless living. That's what customers are really buying. Or at least that's what the marketing suggests. And that creates another problem. Because lifestyle brands operate differently from ordinary brands. When you buy from a lifestyle brand, you're buying into a person. You're buying into a story. You're buying into an identity. Which means every product failure feels personal. That's the danger. Then another difficult question emerged. Is Meghan trying to build a business? Or a personal myth? Because according to discussions in the uploaded material, critics increasingly believe the line between those two things is becoming blurred. Every product references a memory. Every launch references a feeling. Every campaign references a version of Meghan's life. And while that can be powerful, it can also backfire. Because when customers dislike the product, they start questioning the story too. Then another realization appeared. The internet loves success stories. But it loves failure stories even more. That's just reality. And according to discussions surrounding the controversy, every mistake connected to as ever now receives attention far beyond what a normal brand would experience. Because this isn't just a company. It's Meghan Markle. A person people already have strong opinions about. Which means every melted chocolate becomes a headline. Every product complaint becomes a debate. Every launch becomes a referendum on her entire public image. That's a brutal environment for any brand. Then another uncomfortable observation emerged. The criticism isn't coming only from royal watchers anymore. It's coming from consumers. And that's a completely different problem. Because royal controversies come and go. Consumer trust is harder to rebuild once it's damaged. That's why many observers believe these product issues matter more than people think. Because at some point customers stop asking, "Do I like Meghan?" and start asking, "Do I trust this brand?" And according to many critics following the situation, that may be the question as ever is struggling to answer right now. Then another problem appeared. And this one had nothing to do with chocolates. Nothing to do with candles. Nothing to do with shipping. It had everything to do with timing. Because according to the uploaded material, critics started noticing what they believe is becoming a pattern. Every time negative coverage appears, something new suddenly arrives. A new product. A new post. A new announcement. A new distraction. That's the criticism. Not an established fact. But it's a criticism that keeps appearing. And that's where things became uncomfortable. Because some observers started arguing that as ever doesn't behave like a traditional business. It behaves like a reputation management machine. Again, that's their opinion. Not a proven fact. but it's an opinion that is gaining traction. Why? Because according to discussions in the uploaded material, every controversy seems to get buried under another launch. Chocolate problems? Launch something else. Negative headlines? Post something else. Bad reviews? Create another conversation. That's what critics believe they're seeing. Then another realization appeared. That strategy only works if the new products are successful. And that's where the trouble starts. Because according to the uploaded material, every new launch now arrives carrying the weight of the previous one. Think about it. If the chocolates disappoint people, they become more skeptical about the candle. If the candle disappoints people, they become more skeptical about the next launch. That's how trust works. It's cumulative. And unfortunately, so is disappointment. Then another observation spread online. People began comparing as ever to celebrity brands that actually succeeded. Not because celebrity brands are automatically good. Most fail. But because the successful ones usually solve one problem first. Product quality. Everything else comes second. Marketing comes second. Branding comes second. Storytelling comes second. The product has to work. And according to critics discussed in the uploaded material, that's where they believe as ever is struggling. Then another uncomfortable question emerged. Who exactly is the target customer? Seriously. Who is spending premium prices on these products? Because according to discussions surrounding the controversy, critics increasingly argue there's a gap between the luxury image Meghan is trying to project and the experience some customers report receiving. That gap matters. A lot. Because luxury customers are usually less forgiving. When you charge premium prices, expectations rise. And expectations are dangerous. Especially when the internet is watching. Then another realization appeared. Maybe the biggest problem isn't the chocolates. Maybe it isn't the candles. Maybe it isn't the criticism. Maybe it's consistency. Because according to many observers following the brand, consistency is what separates real luxury brands from celebrity side projects. Anybody can launch a product. Anybody can create a website. Anybody can sell a story. The difficult part is delivering the same quality every single time. That's where reputations are built. Or destroyed. Then another observation started spreading. The more Meghan talks about authenticity, the more people scrutinize the details. That's an unavoidable consequence of personal branding. Because according to the uploaded material, As Ever isn't being marketed as a corporation. It's being marketed as Meghan herself. Her memories. Her lifestyle. Her tastes. Her recommendations. Her vision. And that means criticism of the products quickly becomes criticism of Meghan. That's the risk of attaching your identity to a brand. Then another difficult realization emerged. This may explain why every As Ever controversy becomes bigger than it should be. Because people aren't really arguing about candles. They're not really arguing about chocolates. They're arguing about Meghan Markle. And those debates existed long before As Ever ever launched. Which means every product issue becomes another chapter in a much larger story. A story about credibility. A story about public perception. And increasingly, a story about whether Meghan can turn attention into a sustainable business. Because according to many observers following the situation, that's the question hanging over every As Ever launch right now. Then another controversy appeared. And this one had nothing to do with product quality. At least not directly. It had everything to do with image. Because according to the uploaded material, critics began focusing less on what As Ever was selling and more on what Meghan was trying to become. That became the conversation. Not jam. Not chocolate. Not candles. Identity. Because according to discussions presented in the uploaded material, many observers increasingly believe Meghan is attempting to build an entire lifestyle universe around herself. Think about it. Food. Homeware. Entertaining. Fashion. Wellness. Family life. Luxury living. None of these things exist independently. They're all connected. That's the strategy critics believe they're seeing. And honestly, it's not a bad strategy. When it works. The problem is that lifestyle brands depend almost entirely on aspiration. People have to want the life you're selling. That's the challenge. Then another uncomfortable observation started spreading online. Critics argued that Meghan isn't simply selling products anymore. She's selling Meghan. And according to discussions in the uploaded material, that's exactly why every controversy feels so personal. Because if a random company sells a disappointing candle, customers complain. If Meghan sells a disappointing candle, people start debating her entire public image. That's a completely different situation. Then another realization appeared. The brand may actually be trapped by Meghan's fame. Think about that. Most entrepreneurs would love global recognition. Most brands dream of instant visibility. But visibility creates scrutiny. And scrutiny creates pressure. A lot of pressure. According to many observers following the controversy, every as-ever launch now enters the market under a microscope. Every label gets analyzed. Every product gets reviewed. Every claim gets fact-checked. Every mistake becomes content. That's a difficult environment for any business. Then another difficult question emerged. Can Meghan ever win? Seriously. Because according to discussions surrounding the controversy, some critics appear determined to dislike anything she launches before it even reaches customers. That's the reality. And whether it's fair or unfair is almost beside the point. It's happening. Which means as-ever isn't competing only against other brands. It's competing against years of public perception. Years of controversy. Years of headlines. That's a much harder challenge. Then another observation spread. People started comparing Meghan's business strategy to other celebrity founders. And one difference kept appearing. Authenticity. Not whether Meghan is authentic. Whether consumers believe she is. That's the important distinction. Because consumers don't buy authenticity itself. They buy what they perceive as authenticity. And once people start questioning it, every marketing campaign becomes harder. Every launch becomes harder. Every product becomes harder. Then another uncomfortable realization emerged. The chocolate controversy may have become symbolic. Because according to critics discussed in the uploaded material, the melted chocolates represent something larger. Expectations colliding with reality. Luxury branding. Luxury pricing. Luxury promises. Then a product arrives looking very different from what customers expected. That gap is where criticism grows. And critics believe that gap keeps appearing. Then another question started spreading. What happens if the next launch has problems too? Because brands usually survive one controversy. Sometimes two. But repeated controversies create something much more dangerous. A reputation. And reputations are incredibly difficult to reverse once they form. That's why many observers believe the stakes are higher than they appear. Because this isn't really about chocolates anymore. It's about trust. It's about consistency. And it's about whether consumers believe as-ever delivers what it promises. Then another realization appeared. The internet loves narratives. And right now, critics believe a narrative is forming around as-ever. A narrative that every launch somehow creates a new controversy. A narrative that every product somehow creates a new debate. A narrative that the brand struggles to meet the expectations it creates. Fair or unfair, that narrative exists. And once narratives take hold, they become much harder to change than any individual product review. Which is why many observers believe Meghan's biggest challenge isn't fixing the chocolates. It's changing the story. Because right now, according to critics following the situation, the story is starting to write itself. Then another problem appeared. And this one may be the most serious of all. Because according to the uploaded material, the issue isn't that people are laughing at a melted box of chocolates. The issue is that people are starting to expect these stories. That became the real danger. Think about it. A controversy hurts. But predictability kills. Because once consumers begin expecting problems, every future launch starts at a disadvantage. Every customer becomes more skeptical. Every review becomes more influential. Every mistake becomes bigger. That's how brands lose momentum. Then another uncomfortable realization appeared. The internet seems increasingly convinced that every as-ever launch will generate some kind of controversy. Maybe it's packaging. Maybe it's pricing. Maybe it's branding. Maybe it's marketing. People now seem to expect something to go wrong. And that's a terrible position for any company to be in. Because according to discussions surrounding the controversy, customers aren't evaluating products in isolation anymore. They're evaluating them through the lens of previous controversies. That's the problem. Every new launch inherits the reputation of the last one. Then another observation spread online. Critics increasingly argue that as ever feels reactive rather than proactive. According to discussions presented in the uploaded material, some observers believe the brand spends too much time creating moments and not enough time creating confidence. That's an important distinction. Moments create headlines. Confidence creates repeat customers. And long-term businesses need the second one much more than the first. Then another difficult question emerged. What happens when celebrity attention fades? Because attention always fades. That's inevitable. No public figure stays in the headlines forever. Which means eventually every celebrity brand faces the same test. Can the product survive without the celebrity? That is the question. And according to many critics following as ever, they aren't sure the brand has answered it yet. Then another realization appeared. Maybe that's why these product controversies matter more than people think. Because this isn't really year one anymore. Consumers are beginning to form permanent opinions. Permanent habits, permanent impressions. And once those become established, changing them becomes expensive. Very expensive. That's why luxury brands obsess over consistency. One bad experience can lose a customer. One great experience can create a customer for life. The difference matters. Then another uncomfortable observation emerged. Some critics believe Meghan has become trapped by her own marketing. Because according to discussions in the uploaded material, as ever doesn't present itself as ordinary. It presents itself as exceptional. Exceptional ingredients. Exceptional craftsmanship. Exceptional experiences. Exceptional memories. That's a powerful strategy. But it creates a problem. When expectations are elevated, disappointment becomes amplified. A normal brand can survive ordinary mistakes. A luxury brand gets judged much more harshly. That's the trade-off. Then another realization appeared. The chocolate controversy may actually be a warning sign. Not because melted chocolates are catastrophic. They're not. But because they reveal something important. Execution matters. A lot. You can have beautiful branding, beautiful photography, beautiful storytelling, beautiful packaging. But if the product arrives damaged, none of that matters. Then another question started spreading. Can Meghan fix this? That's what many observers are now debating. Because product problems can be solved. Shipping can improve. Packaging can improve. Quality control can improve. Those are operational issues. The harder challenge is perception. Because once people decide your brand has a quality problem, every future mistake confirms what they already believe. That's how narratives become entrenched. Then another uncomfortable realization emerged. This may explain why the viral unboxing became such a big deal. It wasn't just a customer complaint. It felt like confirmation. Confirmation for people who already doubted the brand. Confirmation for people who already questioned the marketing. Confirmation for people who already believed the image was stronger than the execution. And that's why the video spread so quickly. Because it fit an existing narrative. Whether that narrative is fair or unfair, it already exists. And according to many observers following the controversy, that's what should worry Meghan the most right now. Not the chocolates. Not the candle. Not even the criticism. The fact that people increasingly expect the criticism before the product even arrives. And this is where the story becomes much bigger than a box of chocolates. Because according to discussions presented in the uploaded material, the real question isn't whether one shipment melted. The real question is whether as ever can survive the perception that it's becoming a punchline. That's the challenge. Because bad products can be replaced. Damaged shipments can be refunded. Customer complaints can be addressed. But public perception? That's much harder to repair. And according to many observers following the controversy, that's exactly what's at stake right now. Then another uncomfortable realization appeared. Every as ever controversy seems to feed the next one. Think about it. The chocolates go viral. People revisit the candle. The candle sparks new debates. People revisit previous product complaints. Then people start questioning the brand itself. It's a cycle. And critics increasingly believe the cycle is becoming self-sustaining. Then another observation spread online. Some critics argue Meghan has become trapped in a contradiction. Because as ever depends on exclusivity. Luxury brands need exclusivity. Premium pricing needs exclusivity. Aspirational branding needs exclusivity. But the internet thrives on accessibility. The internet wants transparency. The internet wants proof. The internet wants receipts. And those two worlds don't always work together. That became another major conversation. Because every time as ever presents a polished image, critics immediately go looking for imperfections. Every time a luxury promise is made, critics immediately test it. And every time something goes wrong, the story becomes larger than the product itself. That's the reality of operating under a global spotlight. Then another difficult question emerged. What happens if the next launch is perfect? Seriously. What if the next product arrives exactly as promised? What if the quality is excellent? What if customers love it? Would people even notice? That's an uncomfortable question. Because according to discussions surrounding the controversy, negative stories often travel much faster than positive ones. A satisfied customer rarely goes viral. A melted chocolate box absolutely does. That's the challenge every brand faces. But celebrity brands face it on another level entirely. Then another realization appeared. Perhaps the biggest issue isn't the products. It's expectations. Because Meghan isn't launching these products as an unknown entrepreneur. She's launching them as Meghan Markle, a person who has spent years at the center of public debate. Which means every business decision immediately becomes a cultural conversation. That's why ordinary business mistakes become headlines. That's why customer complaints become news stories. That's why every launch feels larger than it actually is. Then another uncomfortable observation emerged. The internet seems increasingly divided into two groups. One group believes critics are determined to see as ever fail. The other believes the brand keeps creating its own problems. And neither side appears interested in changing its mind. That's what makes this so difficult. Because once people choose a narrative, every new event reinforces it. Supporters see unfair criticism. Critics see confirmation. The same incident. Two completely different interpretations. Then another realization appeared. Maybe that's why the chocolate controversy exploded so dramatically. Not because it was shocking, but because it fit a story people were already telling themselves. And according to many observers, that's what transformed a product complaint into a viral moment. Because the internet wasn't reacting to chocolate. It was reacting to Meghan Markle. And those reactions come with years of baggage attached. Years of opinions. Years of headlines. Years of controversy. That's impossible to separate from the brand. So now I want to hear from you. Do you think the as-ever criticism is being blown out of proportion because of Meghan's fame? Or do you think premium prices naturally create premium expectations? Do you believe the viral chocolate controversy was just a shipping problem? Or do you think it points to deeper issues with the brand? And perhaps the biggest question of all, can Meghan Markle successfully build a luxury lifestyle empire? Or has public perception already become her biggest obstacle? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoy deep dives into royal controversies, celebrity brands, media narratives, and the stories dominating the internet, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because according to many observers following this situation, the future of as ever may depend less on marketing and more on one simple thing: whether customers continue believing the promise being sold.